Welcome everyone to the inaugural discussion in our new series on the Sri Lanka-India bilateral relationship and the larger South Asian and Indo-Pacific regions. We have an exciting lineup of speakers from both India and Sri Lanka with us today. I'm Nisha Holla, visiting fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. On behalf of ORF, I'm happy to extend a warm welcome to our colleagues from Sri Lanka, the Colombo Initiative, and the Sapani Foundation. Now, I'd like to invite Dishan from the Colombo Initiative to speak a few words about this exciting new series.
Thank you, Nisha. Welcome once again to all the distinguished speakers and all others joining us this afternoon. My name is Dishan De Silva, and I'm a director at Colombo Initiative, which is a public policy think tank based in Colombo, Sri Lanka. We are very excited to announce a trilateral research partnership between the Observer Research Foundation, the Sapani Foundation, and Colombo Initiative. Over the next several months, we will explore technological, commercial, and strategic issues that are key to the growth of our national economies and regional stability. We will invite leaders from the government and private sectors, civil society, and academia to provide insight as all nations strive to face the challenges of the pandemic. Today, we launch this program as the first of a series of high-level roundtable discussions on Sri Lanka-India bilateral relationship and the larger region. Our topic for this inaugural panel discussion is digital inclusion and transformation in South Asia. As we know, digital technologies have become essential during the pandemic and could serve as an opportunity to promote digital solutions. At this time, I would like to thank our keynote speaker, the State Minister of Digital Technology and Enterprise Development and the Minister of Youth and Sports, Honorable Namal Rajapaksa, as well as our other distinguished speakers for joining us today. I also wish to thank the Observer Research Foundation and the Sapani Foundation for this collaboration, which we hope will be the first among many. And I thank you. Nisha, I hand it back to you.
Thanks, Dishan. We're very much looking forward to this new collaboration series. So without further ado, please welcome Honorable Namal Rajapaksa, Member of Parliament, Minister of Digital Technology and Enterprise Development, and of Youth and Sports to deliver the keynote address. Welcome, Minister.
Thank you, Nisha. It gives me a great pleasure to be with you at this webinar on digital inclusion and transformation in South Asia, organized by ORF, India, in collaboration with Colombo Initiative and Sapani Foundation. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for taking the initiative and conducting this much needed forum amidst current challenges we face due to this global pandemic. Digital transformation is affecting how we work, socialize, and create economic values. The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted the significant support and investment on digital transformation, effective digital governance across all countries in the region, particularly to ensure the continuity and delivery of core government functions. COVID-19 pandemic devastating impacts is in every corner of the world. As we look back at this period, divided into pre-COVID and post-COVID world. The difference each of the post-COVID world will be the digital transformation that has permeated every aspect of our life. As the Forbes magazine highlights, there are six pillars of digital transformation: experiences, people, change, innovation, leadership, and culture. I believe that inclusion must be at the heart of digital transformation to leave no one behind. We need to embed inclusive objectives in our core foundations of digital economy: internet access, digital skills, digital financing, and e-commerce. If a nation is to move forward in the current context, community-led digital transformation is vital. Irrespective of the government policies, the community needs to embrace the digital transformation fundamentals and take lead in this journey. The government will be then compliant to make the steps forward digitalization. We need to educate the public on the importance of digital transformation and benefit of digital education, especially during the pandemic. For example, digital education in Sri Lanka, even though at the early stage is growing at a rapid rate, due to the pandemic, the school system had embraced online education, which they were reluctant to do before, and now it is one of the fastest growing sectors in the country. United Nations have recognized digital education as one of the key pillars in their sustainable development goals. One of the objectives under this pillar is by 2030, sustainably increase the number of youth and adults who have relevant skills, including technical and vocational skills, for employment and entrepreneurship. This too is a key priority for us in Sri Lanka. We are committed to provide our youth with skills and the tools to further their ambitions and promote entrepreneurship and assist them to find skilled employment. This is vital for countries such as us. We need to keep our youth occupied. The 21st century is known as knowledge-centric century. Therefore, to remain globally competitive, we must be efficient and technologically needs to be integrated in every sector of the economy, be it agriculture, industry, or service sector. It is vital that we invest strategically in new technologies and include such innovation into our education system and economy. A culture of technological innovation must be nurtured. Under the leadership of His Excellency, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, a key priority of our government is to work towards a digitally inclusive Sri Lanka. While we drive all this vision forward, the convenience of our citizens would be the foremost consideration in setting up a citizen-centric digital government. We will ensure that we put in place a process where people would not have to be inconvenienced due to insufficiency, delay, and having commute to many points of service, deliver to obtain public service, when such service would be obtained via internet. While we have already implemented digital access to vital documents such as birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, we are working towards establishing a fully digital ID. The process of establishing a centralized digital ID has already begun, and we hope to begin work by end of the year, along with e-Gram Sevaka service, which will allow the public access to essential public services from government. While education, public services, and shifting to the digital space economy to have had to follow suit. With COVID-19, our entire lifestyle have changed. We no longer impact or go about like we used to. We cannot. Corporations and countries like need to start investing more in digital platforms and online trading. In Sri Lanka, we hope to simplify the process of e-businesses. We are looking at attracting more investment in e-commerce spaces. We are also actively pursuing blockchain technology, which would facilitate for digital currencies on a large digital economy. We are also looking at promoting esports and gaming with so many talented youth and an already vibrant community of gamers and developers alike. We see a lot of promise in this, especially for the younger generation. Globally, esports remains as a $100 billion industry with infinite potential. We should encourage our youth to explore these ventures to create a livelihood for themselves, but also create new industries. While youth are stuck indoors, digital space provides them with an escape not only to express their creativity, but also monetize it. While digital transformation is certain, its direction is not. Government, civil societies, and the private sector must work together to ensure that digital technologies benefit not only the economy, but society and the environment and have inclusion at their heart. Only then do we stand a chance of realizing the true transformation potential of digital technologies to accelerate progress on sustainable development goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for setting the stage for our panel discussion. Today, our panel is on digital inclusion and transformation in South Asia. To discuss the digital transformation in India and Sri Lanka today, we have a fantastic lineup of panelists who represent both the policy side and the entrepreneurial side, both in India and in Sri Lanka. We're, of course, joined by the Minister himself. We have Mr. Mahinda Herath, who is the CEO of the Information and Communication Technology Agency, or ICTA, of Sri Lanka. We have Ms. Jayomi Lokuliyana, who is the co-founder and CEO of zMessenger and DigitalX in Sri Lanka. Ms. Anna Roy in India is the senior advisor of the National Institution for Transforming India, or NITI Aayoh, and Ms. Dina Jacob, who's the co-founder and CFO of Open Financial Technologies. A warm welcome to the panelists and, of course, to our audience. Audience, if you have any questions at any time during the panel, please do post them. Our channels are now open. So without further ado, my first question to Mr. Herath. Now, the telecommunications revolution has been a key component of the digital transformation in South Asia. Now, you developed your expertise in the telecom sector before moving to governance now. So do tell us how the telecom revolution has driven and continues to drive Sri Lanka's digital inclusion strategies.
Thank you, Nisha, for that question. As we all know, in the digital transformation, digital readiness plays a vital role. In the Sri Lanka has an elaborate digital readiness blueprint drawn out as a part of the national digital transformation. And the key aspect in the digital readiness is digital access, availability and affordability for telecommunications, because we all know that it is the vital last mile connection that brings people to the digital transformation. Actually, now, if I may touch upon very quickly on the figures in Sri Lanka. If you go to the mobile sector, we have penetration of about 150% mobile, and mobile broadband about 87% penetration in the country. And when you come to the fixed lines, the penetration is about 20%, and again about 12 to 13% more fixed broadband. Now, if you look at our total population, of all this population, about 50% of the people are internet users, and about 37% are active social media users. So now, if you look at these figures, probably on the regional scale, these are good figures, but when you look at the world scale, this may not be up to the world standard. Of course, since the digital connectivity or telecommunications connectivity is a vital role, there are several active programs going on right now. One such program is called the Gamata Sannivedana. When you translate to English, it is communications to the village. So there's a program by the government that is now rapidly rolling out to provide 4G connectivity to all the villages in the country. And also during this pandemic, digital education, the importance of digital education came to the fore. And there is a program right now going on to provide fiber connectivity to more than 10,000 schools over a period of time. And the telecommunications regulator will be using the fund, which is known as the Telecommunication Development Charge, to subsidize these rollouts. So as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, we are very much active in providing the digital access in order to make sure that the digital transformation is inclusive and all segments of the country, all segments of people of the country can join in the digital transformation. There are two programs through programs initiated by the government. I think these programs are, as far as the coverage is concerned, I would say, as a person who had been in the telco field for some time, I would say it's a monumental program to provide 4G coverage for all the villages and also to cover all the schools with fiber connectivity. So this is actually the fundamental idea here is embrace inclusion into the digital transformation roadmap of Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Mr. Herath. Ms. Roy, if you could maybe start next while we wait on Nisha.
Thank you, Mr. De Silva. And my name is Anna Roy. I'm Senior Advisor in NITI Aayoh, the premier think tank of Government of India. Actually, I was also facing some tech challenge, so I switched off my camera, so apologies for that. And it's kind of a, deja vu moment for me, because earlier in my earlier avatar, I was in Ministry of Finance and dealing with public-private partnership. And I made several trips to Sri Lanka to share the framework which India is adopting in public-private partnership and exploring areas where India and Sri Lanka could collaborate. So really happy and to be back on a platform where we are discussing possible areas of collaboration between India and Sri Lanka. I see Nisha is back. So Nisha, I will start with my presentation if that's okay. Thank you. If you could please go to the next slide. So I have taken the liberty of going beyond digital and focusing on the entire emerging technology space, which really rides over the digitalization of the economy. And exploring, basically, I will be suggesting on exploring areas of possible collaboration between NITI Aayog and other organizations in GOI with the government of Sri Lanka in this space. So as we are all aware, frontier technology, we are in the fourth space and the fourth phase. And this is something which is where we are confounded by cyber physical, and it is growing exponentially over time and at a rate which we have not seen before. Next, please. So the technologies these really are a bouquet of technologies, whether machine learning, IoT, AR, VR, cloud computing, blockchain.
I think Ms. Roy has dropped off. So we'll come back. We'll come back to her presentation. I will now move to Ms. Jacob in India. So, we've heard from a policy perspective, and so now we can move to the private sector. And I'll start with Ms. Jacob. See, in India, digital inclusion is almost synonymous with financial inclusion, because mobile banking enabled financial access to the millions who were unbanked before. So it also opened doors for neobanks like Open Financial Technologies, your company, to create unique technological platforms. So what has been your experience riding this digital/financial, transformation wave?
Thank you, Nisha. So it's in fact a privilege to share where we started in terms of our vision and especially looking at what in India and the start of the entrepreneurial journey, as well as how it has panned out in the last 4 years. We are a 4-year-old company started by 4 of us who had been in the thick of the problem, working very closely with India. Has got more than almost a 55 to 60% of the self-employed category, with around 63 million SMEs. It's a very high number. So when we looked at the economy and when we started working very closely with this kind of businesses, what we found is that digital inclusion and financial inclusion are two parts of the coin. So first, the financial inclusion started with banking getting a lot democratized, or rather a lot penetrated in the Indian market, particularly starting with the individuals and then going into the physical presence and how they get access to the entire banking system. But what still remained a problem was when the digital transformation happened, how exactly the inclusion, the financial inclusion and the digital could come together. So there were two key triggers in the past 5 years. If you look at it, the demonetization which came, as well as pandemic, there were two key triggers which technically made it mandatory for having financial inclusion. Digital inclusion was important, and thanks to the entire infrastructure and the kind of government initiatives we had in the country, we saw a great wave of the data being much cheaper, more affordable, getting access to more people getting access to that. So which is where we felt, but still the problem remained in terms of, while consumers were being a lot looked at, the businesses were being ignored to some extent in terms of getting this technology together. So that's how we started off this journey of how do you bring in the financial inclusion and the digital part together for businesses, and which is where we were the pioneers in bringing in entire Asia the concept of the neo-banking concept, particularly for businesses, wherein it's a completely digital model of your banking, and we couple that with payments, compliance, and accounting part of it, which is the essential integrated parts to run a business. So this is how we have started off in terms of the financial inclusion was in the heart of it, and that particularly for the vast majority of the self-employed population who is contributing to the economy of India and to the job creation. And the concept was like, without that we cannot make progress. In the last 1 year, very happy to share that we've been able to touch almost 1.5 million businesses all across the country, and this is brought together, and we at any point in time the kind of lot that we handle for these businesses is in the upwards of around $2 billion USD. So that's a kind of platform, or rather adoption, which has happened, and it has been a gradual, but initially it has been gradual. But yet what we also saw is that offline businesses, not only the digital savvy, initially our thought was like only the digital savvy 2 or 3 million SMEs could be in a position to use this. But to our surprise, we have seen that even offline businesses and traditional businesses adopting in a great manner, and that's when we realized that there is how financial inclusion and this goes hand in hand. Plus, this is required in terms of creating a history for them, creating or rather enabling them in terms of the entire payments, and having a kind of the history created, which helps us understand what their requirements are, and then take the next step in terms of helping them manage the cash flow, and even having access to credit, for example, or even having access to various other financial products, which helps them in betterment of their business, which adds to the growth part of it. So that has been our experience, Nisha.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tina. We now go back to Ms. Roy to conclude her remarks on NITI Aayog's policies in digital inclusion.
Thank you, Nisha. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, please go ahead, Anna.
So as I was speaking on the issue of frontier technologies, in our experience, we have seen while they hold immense economic potential in terms of employment and capital generation, but the adoption is being driven by commercial considerations in only a few select sectors. The applications are enormous for societal benefits, including inclusion, whether financial or in other sectors like health, education, etc. And government can work as the biggest adopter of frontier technology and lead the way for investment by private sector. In case of artificial intelligence, the government is rooting for inclusive growth, and where the growth in AI technology development can be limited by funding, etc., which can be met by the government, and an attempt to have AI for the greater good of increased access to quality health facilities, inclusive financial growth, real-time advisory to farmers, building smart and efficient cities, etc. The government is also rooting for a garage approach to AI, where India provides a perfect playground for enterprises and institutions globally to develop scalable solutions, which can then be easily implemented in the other countries, especially the neighboring countries and similarly placed countries like India. NITI Aayog is working across technologies. We have come out with several strategy documents on artificial intelligence, blockchain. Presently, we are finalizing the strategy document on digital banking. We have also come out with 2-part series on the responsible AI. We are developing a national data and analytics portal and undertaking several pilots in the states to see the governance challenges in implementation of frontier technology. The national strategy on AI framework really prioritizes the sectors like health, agriculture, education, etc., and proposes several action steps towards meeting the goals set. The data access is an important part, and we are looking at a platform-based approach on having an intelligent layer of data on raw data. Basically, India being a very, very data-rich country, the next step is to create an intelligent layer over it. That is what we are looking at. In case of compute infrastructure, we are trying to democratize the access to compute infrastructure, which we feel will really kind of change the entire landscape. We also are implementing several pilot projects in various frontier technology. One of the important areas on data privacy and data sharing is the data empowerment and protection architecture. And this we would like to, this is also on our website. And this is the way forward where we can really leverage the data which the digitalization movement can kind of capture and taking us to the next phase. Coming to the possible areas of collaboration between Government of Sri Lanka and NITI Aayoh, we feel that we can look for a consortium of research and development network, focus areas to identify solutions of social impact, and data protection and governance is one of the areas we would like to work on. And of course, the new area where we have just embarked on is the responsible AI tools and techniques. And I invite the esteemed audience as well as my co-panelists of this meeting to share proposals for research and collaboration with NITI Aayoh. Thanks, Nisha. I quickly try to go over it before I get cut off again by the poor network. So sorry for the speed. I just wanted to say my piece. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Roy. Thank you for giving us an overview of what NITI Aayog is doing. And now we will go back to the private sector, but this time in Sri Lanka. Ms. Lokuliyana, how has Sri Lanka's digital transformation created opportunities for entrepreneurs such as yourself? Tell us about some of the exciting spaces that have opened up just in the last decade with the digitalization accelerating trend. And, in Kaushalya Rajapaksa in the audience asks us, what will be the opportunity open to the Sri Lankan software companies in the process of digital transformation? So if you could give us your perspective on that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'm really delighted to be on this panel. I think it's a very aptly, timely discussion. So I think if you look at a thriving digital economy, it requires essential physical infrastructure, such as electricity or internet access, and also foundational digital systems such as the digital ID and the digital payment, and of course the investment capital. So if you look at the Sri Lanka's context over the past decade, I think our connected population has surged by double digits. And as per the McKinsey study on the nation's digital maturity, I think Sri Lanka's digital quotient got a score of 35, which is actually put us slightly higher than the global median score of 33. So having said that, I think Sri Lanka has already built strength on connectivity, regulatory levers, and also investment in digital initiatives, I think, which has created a dynamic environment for entrepreneurs, such as even myself, to launch digital-enabled or digitally enhanced offerings to the market. So I like to kind of highlight some of the notable development in terms of Sri Lankan context. One of the most notable act is the Electronic Transaction Act, which we launched, which has actually enabled reliable forms of e-commerce in the country and also digital transactions. And as Minister Namal Rajapaksa explained, the electronic filling of applications and also acceptance of digital signatures has actually enabled us the cross-border transactions too. And the other most important aspect of this is the foundational digital ID system, I think, which is backed by Biometrics, which is underway. and especially for companies like us, because this will enable us to have, enable us to give access to citizens without much doubt or with much confidence, and also place us in a legally established manner that will make us more attractive for investors as well. And of course, there's relaxation of taxes for e-businesses in Sri Lanka, and also already the IT businesses are made tax-free, so which I think has enabled companies like us to innovate in a more and bounds. So having said that, not only the physical and infrastructure, digital infrastructure that foster innovation or entrepreneurial innovation, I think the third as important part is the flow of capital to new startups. Of course, as entrepreneurs, yes, we have an array of funding, access to different private funding, but there are significant barriers when obtaining those. So recognizing that, actually, just a few months ago, I think we launched a new credit evaluation framework for startups, which is introduced by actually ICTA, which I consulted as a steering committee member to formulate an alternative mechanism to evaluate tech companies for funding without the need to rely on personal collateral. Because about 20 years ago, when I started my business, I was faced with the same challenge of getting the personal collateral, and I'm so happy that I was able to steer such committee. So now there's an alternative than relying on personal collateral. So I believe such initiatives will help reduce the funding gap for digital entrepreneurs especially, and innovators in our country, and pave way for emergence of new digital businesses. So this is my take on that.
Thank you, Ms. Lokuliyana. I'll now go to the Honorable Minister. What are the steps taken by the Sri Lankan government in the digital front in managing the COVID-19 pandemic? In addition, we have an audience question from Samiran Gupta. He asks, how effective has the internet been in serving the people of Sri Lanka, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic? Is enough content available in Sinhala and Tamil languages? Honorable Minister, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, when you look at, first of all, I must agree with Naomi as well about the comments about the digital transformation in Sri Lanka, and also about the legislation that we are looking at establishing in next couple of months' time. So when it comes to the pandemic, I mean, one of the key we were looking at was the vaccination drive, and we used the COVID tracker to track the vaccination program, and we must say that we have been able to successfully drive a campaign for the vaccination, where we have managed to vaccine more than 50% of our population. And at the same time, we did, in the Western Province, we did try out the home care system through SMS platforms, and also via telecommunication. So in that way, the hospital density or the hospital number of hospital beds can be reduced when it comes to intermediate treatment centers, because initial stage of COVID-19 management, every patient has to go to intermediate treatment center. So then what we did was, with the health authorities together with the other organizations, we came up with a call center and SMS platform where we allowed the patients to stay at home and connect to technology on a periodical checks with the health authorities. So and at the same time, the vaccination card and vaccination drive through COVID tracker, and also digital vaccination card, and also Jayomi's comment about the national digital ID. I mean, that will enable and give access to all the data and all the connectivity between the communities, and that is going to be the key feature that we are going to concentrate on next couple of years. In fact, we are in discussion with some of the Indian companies and the government of India as well to assist to get assistance to maybe do the national ID card correctly and experience that we have gained in India. And when you talk about the internet penetration, as our colleagues earlier mentioned, we do have a very strong base when it comes to mobile penetration in the country and then network coverage. But yes, I do agree. We have certain pockets, I would say, where there is no 4G or 5G or 4G or 3G for data. which has occurred as a result of a long-term unplanned infrastructure development that has been taken place in Sri Lanka for the last 20 years. So now what we do to TRC and ICTA together, we are doing the regulations and also restructuring the tower arrangements in that way all the pockets will be covered. So we do have a reasonable coverage when it comes to data, but I do agree that we need to expand it more and cover the pockets as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Now back to Ms. Roy. We're hearing from our Sri Lankan colleagues about need for a biometric identification system. India has, of course, built the Aadhaar system with 1.2 billion Indians on it and all of their data. Data privacy and digital sovereignty is a looming debate worldwide today. And indeed, these are essential in this new digitally connected global economy. So for any sovereign state to maintain techno-sovereignty, what steps do you envisage at the policy level for data privacy and digital sovereignty?
So as I mentioned earlier, we have published a paper on DAPA, which is a consent-based data sharing architecture. And in fact, we are now, we have reached out to the European Union and similar other countries in that Australia, etc. And I think that is the way forward, where you maintain privacy and also are able to leverage data. On that base architecture, already sandboxes have been developed by RBI, account aggregators have been appointed, and the need of the hour is basically get as many as data suppliers on that platform, so that the digital footprint can be leveraged, and only when we do that will we really be able to achieve the financial inclusion in the truest sense, whether it is credit, pension, insurance, you name it. Now, having said that, responsibly using technology is also something with which the sovereign, I think, has a duty to kind of create awareness and set up standards, etc. So we have taken a big move in that direction by releasing two-part papers, reports. First is on the principles that need to be adhered to for any adoption of frontier technology. The second is about how to kind of operationalize those principles. And we are presently working on the third part of the report, which is what can the public policy, the nature could be. And that is under discussion. And we would look forward to working with our neighbors like Sri Lanka to take this discussion forward. Because if we create the trust within the people, that trust brings in more kind of people movement in the entire thing. Thank you. Thank you, Nisha. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Ms. Roy. Now to Mr. Herath. The pandemic provided such a boost to digital adoption worldwide. And with ICTA being the pivotal policy body for digital platforms in Sri Lanka, how do you plan to convert this accelerated digital adoption, this competitive advantage, so to speak, into data platforms and services for Sri Lankan citizens? At a policy level, how do you envision this?
Well, Nisha, as I explained before, the national policy document, which is entitled Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor, the policy document put forward by His Excellency the President about 2 years back, has a special chapter dedicated for a technology-based society. And based on that, we have developed a national digital transformation policy and a roadmap, a blueprint, I would say, which His Excellency the President, as the line minister, has got approval from the cabinet late 2020, and we are adopting that digital transformation policy, and that has several components in that. As I explained before in my previous answer, we have a digital readiness blueprint built into the digital transformation strategy, and we normally say there are 3 A's in the digital readiness: accessibility, affordability, and applicability. So our policy is actually built around these 3 A's. Accessibility, as I explained before, availability for all the people in Sri Lanka. So I elaborated on 2 strategies before on this Gamata Sannivedana, that is communication to the village and also fiberizing the school network. On the affordability front, Sri Lanka's broadband charges are pretty much in the lower segment as far as the world is considered. And more specifically to your question, we are really focusing on digital applicability in our digital readiness blueprint. When we say digital applicability, we mainly focus at digital literacy, the motivation and skills in order to develop the digital literacy, and most importantly, digital participation. So the key principles we use in our digital participation strategy is, when we develop our digital transformation solutions, we make sure that these solutions deliver value to the masses on their day-to-day life, so that those solutions will be applicable, so that those solutions will deliver better quality of life to the people. And also we concentrate on the fact that this digital participation includes connectivity, connecting communities. And as the Honorable Minister explained, we are also trying to create trust in the digital system to the masses, trust in the digital ecosystem. Now, the Data Protection Act and the Cybersecurity Act is almost in the final stages. It will become law very soon. The Honorable Minister is taking action on that. So we have a very elaborate digital readiness plan in order to get digital participation, and we are running a number of projects, a number of programs for digital inclusion. Whether it be youth, the women, senior citizens, differently abled. Likewise, for each segment, we are running a number of digital initiatives under the National Digital Transformation Blueprint. Now, for example, if I would give a few examples, there are programs running for the youth at the moment. On the use of social media, we are doing it, the ICTA with the ministry. We are working with the National Youth Corps, in delivering this program. And then there's a youth employment initiative working with the Youth Council for 34,000 youth in the country. When it comes to women, we have this, the famous Smart Women Initiative, we call it Zurulia. This has been featured in international forums also, where we have a program to get women to adopt digital and promote digital entrepreneurship. Actually, we go to the remote village level in this program, and this has, as I said, this has been featured quite often in the international forum. And also, we are developing 2,600 women knowledge agents in 330 divisional secretariats. So the divisional secretariat is a administrative unit in the government administration. So there are 330 odd divisional secretariats in the country. So we are training more than 2,600 women knowledge agents. And of course, we have programs aimed at senior citizens. We call Digital Helping Hand Initiative, mainly focusing on senior citizens so that they can consume digital. Then, as I said, there are other programs for the differently abled people and development of content in accessible format. Then we are collaborating with the Department of Social Services in these programs. Likewise, I can keep on going on many programs. When I mention many of these programs, it might give the impression that these are not, interrelated. Actually, these are very much interrelated and interconnected in a very well-defined fabric of digital inclusion program that is running under the government's digital transformation initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Herath. So I understand that the Honorable Minister has to leave soon. So my next question to you, Minister. We've had several audience questions asking about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology in Sri Lanka. Further, Fadil Meedin asks, Honorable Minister, very impressive exercise taken at the highest level. Are we on draft stage to map the national digital profile at present in formulating the digitalization strategy for the country?
Well, I mean, we are in discussion with the central bank and the authorities about introducing new form of currency and looking at the new trends in the world, because we believe Sri Lanka is looking at becoming a hub when it comes to South Asia, whether it's maritime, whether it's aviation, or whether it's transshipment, or we're looking at education. So we believe with the new investment that has come into Sri Lanka, such as Port City, and the flexibility that we're looking at on transactions. So we believe we should move into new ways of currency as well, new ways of trading as well. So we are seriously looking at blockchain technology and blockchain related industries to be expanded in Sri Lanka, including crypto. And we are on the verge of drafting a cabinet paper to get the policy approval in order to formulate the regulations or the policies related to these kind of sectors that we can expand our economy into. Because as we all agree, the digital economy is rapidly growing fast in all over the world. And we believe we as Sri Lankans is the ideal time for us to formulate the regulations that can regulate the blockchain industry in Sri Lanka and also allow new blockchain platforms to come and do their launch pads in Sri Lanka and also use Sri Lanka as one of their destinations. So we are in discussion and we are looking at formulating policies as a government. But from the government's point of view, we are very keen on looking at new ways of investment coming into Sri Lanka. So at the same time, we are also looking at digital banking and other digital economy as well, because as Mr. Mahinda Herath was clearly mentioning about the digital grouping that we are going to accept, that we are going to implement in the next couple of years. We believe along with digital transformation, the digital economy is utmost important for Sri Lanka as well. So this is something that we are looking at in a very positive way.
Thank you, Minister. And thank you very much for joining us for this inaugural discussion today. Great having you. Thank you. Now I'll move back to the private sector and listen to some of their perspectives again. Ms. Jacob, during the pandemic, how did the digital products and services developed by the private sector in India serve in ensuring continuity of services here?
Nisha, the pandemic has been a very particularly challenging situation beyond description for especially for the businesses, and that too in the retail and the the freelancer retail kind of community. So the impact has been terrible for businesses across, and particularly for the smaller one. And what we have also seen from the closed corners is that till then, while with demonetization, the slow transition from the digital transformation as well as the financial inclusion, everything was slowly happening, and the country had adopted or rather warmed up to the need of coming digital. However, pandemic was made it mandatory, no longer a option to have, or rather something for the future to look at, but something which is essential for your existence. So let me take a couple of examples that we have seen in our journey as well. In the last pandemic, in the first lockdown, when we went in March, April time, we were at about a 500K user base on the business side, and we saw almost in that 2 months the kind of adoption and the new distinct or rather the businesses falling all the way to almost 50% of them not being able to be in business in that point in time. And then we had quite a lot of, after that, around 2 months when the country started slowly opening up, what we saw was a surge in adoption. And the entire 1 million users, it's about the last 12 months we have seen them adopting, and the kind of variety of users which came into picture also. is a classic example of how private sector and this kind of, and when I talk about digital transformation, the traditional banking, you cannot transform it 100% in a day's time, in a month's time, or when these kind of essentials come. And that's exactly where, private sector, it was a great time of collaboration as well. We have seen, entire banking system collaborating with the tech part of it from the fintech system. And we were able to join hands in a much meaningful way to tide over the situation. So compared to last year, what we have seen when we went into the current lockdown in the second wave, what we have found is that there hasn't been much of an impact on businesses, which means they became more savvy. They became more, habituated in terms of adopting how their systems come into picture, how they can navigate through the earlier friendly neighborhood bank manager who was just a stone's throw away for the businesses. They never had a trigger to exactly think of tomorrow I should get into this part of it, which exactly impacted when the pandemic struck. It impacted them because it impacted their adaptability, ability to collect, ability to do business, ability to go online. So currently, in the last 6 to 8 months, we have seen that adoption shifting a lot. From compared to today, we add almost close to 1 lakh customers. I mean, 70K plus customers on the platform every month compared to around 20 to 25K at that point in time. Just giving you these numbers just to show how the entire system has warmed up to this idea, and the kind of almost 15 banks that we work with to take this entire banking to the inclusion part to the businesses on board. And in terms of the governmental push, also must load government for the quick action in terms of how the entire infrastructure, if the infrastructure, banking, and the private sector in terms of the technology works together, it would have been an impossible journey to where we are today. So today, if you see a full lockdown would have a 10 to 15% impact at max on the population that we have seen compared to almost close to 50% we would have seen in the past. It simply means it's not because businesses are not affected, but they have found different ways in which they can go digitally and conduct their business, both from a growth perspective as well as from money flow and various other perspectives. So that's one thing I wanted to put in front, and which is where the collaboration has been one of the best silver lining you would have ever seen. And while pandemic has been very unfortunate, but the adaptability and the way in which that survival and thriving has came through. I mean, initially it was survival for 3 to 4 months, what we have seen, and now it is the quest to, or rather, how do you go to the thriving situation? And there, the way in which businesses have adopted, or rather looked at technology, got themselves habituated. Offline businesses coming online and trying to cater to the businesses. Simple example, like a neighborhood store wherein you used to go and pick up items. They have started home delivery, but at the same time, imagine the way in which the cash transactions again became much reduced because of the pandemic and the fears around it. So these are the areas where the entire thing of the digital part of the payment push, or even for that matter pause, you have the banking in a box kind of, which we are also providing to the businesses, which is a great hit because we can actually have the touch point in a much more digital manner and much more meaningful manner with the customer, the bridge between the customer, or rather demand, and the way in which they do businesses. And this is exactly the same with the B2B as well, because if it has been a check kind of scenario earlier, how have they adopted completely into a digital payment part of it, and then handling the entire, I mean, again, from the government perspective and compliance and everything related, which helps you go online and have a footprint there, which helps you get into the financial inclusion part of it, right from assessing for the moratorium kind of, how do you look at, previously what you were during this time, how do you assess to whom these kind of benefits have to go to. And then when it comes to the other inclusion part, like the insurance, the social security, all of that has been rolled out. How do you can transform, or rather have the touch point with wider audience? These are some of the areas where we saw a lot of fintechs. A lot of fintechs also did a commendable solutioning within the country, and more so to commendable job from the banks and the other infrastructure. I mean, financial, the regulated entities, the regulator, the RBI, and even the government, wherein the entire string was beautifully laid out, so that in 6 to 8 months now, when we see the scenario, it is a way different.
Thanks, Dina. My next question to Ms. Lokuliyana: how can the private sector utilize these new digital models to provide products and services for the benefit and inclusion of citizens? In addition, we have an audience question from Supun Rajapaksa wants to know if there is a methodology in Sri Lanka for companies doing digital marketing from Sri Lanka to negotiate with the Ministry of Media in those countries to contact foreign countries?
Okay. Right. So coming to your first question, I think countries cannot truly embrace digital transformation without the leadership of the private sector. So I think business leaders should be involved in crafting what I call a national digital compact, such as like designing affordable digital products and also embracing the disruptive competition of new industries, as well as building digital skills across the workforce. So this is not only a matter of, I think, social obligation for private sector, but also it will be a but of a mutual benefit. Because why I say that? Because private sector stands to gain from better livelihoods, wealthier customer bases, as well as more skilled labor force. So talking about the pandemic accelerated digitalization, I think especially industries such as healthcare, pharma, financial services, education, and logistics, as well as professional services. I think they have been presented with immense opportunity to develop digital products and services. Talking about personal, in my context, I saw addition of new digital products offerings into my business portfolio during this time, namely MyMed, which is a digital healthcare platform, which is aiming to integrate health services and island-wide medicine delivery mechanism, and also Med Expert, which is actually a medical second opinion service, which connects to top oncologists from the global level, even from US and UK. And a Satkara, which is a country's first crowd-funded medicine donation platform. That actually came really handy during the requirement for high life dependency units in the country that enabled even Sri Lankan diaspora to donate equipment to Sri Lanka. And as well as in the digital marketing side, there was a question actually where we have launched a platform which is a programmatic advertising ecosystem in Sri Lanka. It's called adstudio.cloud. That has actually enabled for local advertisers and brands to target local readers or local audiences and carry out their advertising needs. And that also reduces the need, reduces the outflow of foreign currency exchange to the larger big five networks outside Sri Lanka. So these are some of the which actually helped in my context. Actually, this has accelerated my business growth by almost 200% with these innovations. So this is the kind of impact or the opportunity that is presented from digitalization. But also having said that, I think reaching everyone means looking beyond your current business models. Because private sector, I mean, usually we look at the most wealthier, or most of our services are built for middle class. But in this context, I think if we are to leave no one behind, there should be a total redesign of the products and services, especially to meet the marginalized as well as also the women. Because since I present the women chamber, I think that's something which I cannot talk about. How the services could be more made meaningful, or how do you engage with the female population in the country? Because Sri Lanka has relatively less female representation in the digital arena. So there were some questions were asked, are we offering our digital services in local language? So the content relevancy, not only the understanding, but also whether it's relevant to their needs and wants is something I think the private sector, this is not only the job of a government, I think it's a initiative the private sector should look at when designing their digital products and services. And also like creating a simplified version of their services, because even if you look at e-commerce, that enables larger transactions. But what about the marginalized who depends on daily income? For them, there should be a different mechanism of offering, but with better user experience as well. So these are some of the, I would say, some of the thinking that should be embedded in the private sector, or even as we as entrepreneurs. And also the other most important thing, definitely though our country has larger connectivity, mobile penetration, the digital literacy. Because literacy, not only the literacy, but also numeracy and digital skills matter in this context of inclusion. So how do we kind of provide or reduce this friction when they access these digital services. Actually, Sri Lankan government, their National Information Center, it caters to all 3 languages. But when it comes to the private sector offerings, are we really looking at, are we kind of reducing this friction? For example, even registering to an e-commerce site, have we reduced the number of steps, or have you made it so simplified so that they don't have to kind of possess a very high technical or digital knowledge to do that, or to get on to that? And also talking about women inclusion, I think again the content relevancy should be there. They should feel safe in the digital environment, because especially females, the social cultural norms as well as your own personal safety has become a concern for them to not engage in digital services. How do we enable that? For example, Sri Lanka even launched a female only ride-hailing app called Pink, which actually enable more female population to safely access these ride-hailing services. So these are some of the examples I thought, and I think it's all about, for private sector, when we design digital offerings for inclusion, it's all about striking the right balance between profitability, affordability, and the user experience. So this is what I think the kind of opportunities that are presented here. And what was the second question?
I think you answered it about digital marketing. Thank you. Yeah,
sure.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jayomi. So, Mr. Herath, we just heard from Dina and Jayomi on how they think the private sector can collaborate with the government, and what are the new spaces there. I'd like to ask you from a policy perspective, how government, policymakers, and private sector can work together to build more and better platforms to drive digital inclusion and economic growth.
I will, in answering that, I'll take a step back and explain. Now, earlier also I emphasized on the digital transformation strategy we have. While we are, the strategy is to have a whole of nation digital transformation strategy, and in that we have the whole of government digital transformation and the digital economy. Actually, in the digital economy strategy, one of the key targets is to develop the private sector. Actually, we are developing the ecosystem in and the private sector plays a key and vital role, because in order to take all the challenges in the economy, the government alone cannot do that. And now, even if you consider many of the solutions develops for the government, actually we give the guidelines, and in most cases it is the private sector that develops the solution based on the architectural and other guidelines given by the ICTA based on the National Digital Blueprint. So we have placed a lot of emphasis on getting the government, private sector involved in the planning of the national digital transformation. In fact, they serve in number of our advisory committees, and they are contributing effectively. Even this morning we had such a committee where a number of industry participants were involved. So we constantly get them engaged to make sure that, because the engine that will, in the government's opinion too, is the engine that will drive the digital transformation in the country. Where now Sri Lanka is a good IT BPO destination, and we are trying to move from that level to more IP and product engineering type of products. So we have elaborate national digital economy transformation strategy also in place under the digital transformation policy of the government, where the private sector is significantly involved. And we believe, as I said again, and I reiterate, that the policy is designed in such a way that believing the private sector is the engine that could help the government to do the digital transformation in this country.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll close with one last question from the audience, and I'll direct this to Ms. Roy, because you spoke about how national governments can collaborate in your presentation. So Parthvi Gangwar asks, can we set up a policy or system where the two countries can help each other in the field of medicine and education in real time, and presumably other services as well?
No, absolutely. Actually, when NITI Aayog came out with the National AI Strategy, a global AI alliance is what we had pitched. And we can provide a platform. NITI Aayog itself can, facilitate a platform where, it's not necessary that only governments talk to each other. For a field like artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, the research, academia, as well as industry need to also come on the same platform. And that is how we work on it. And we can always be there to provide this platform and work with the government of Sri Lanka so that we do not reinvent the wheel, and we work together and kind of, accelerate the efforts which benefit both the governments.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. So thank you, everyone. Technical issues aside, I think this was an extremely informational panel for both the Sri Lankans and for the Indians. I certainly learned a lot. And on behalf of the Observer Research Foundation, I'd like to thank Mr. Herath, Ms. Jacob, Ms. Lokuliyana, and Ms. Roy for joining us on the panel today. I'd like to thank the Minister for joining us and delivering a keynote. I'd like to thank Dishan from the Colombo Initiative and the Sapani Foundation, our colleagues, in building such a wonderful start to this series of discussions. And of course, to the audience, you all have been wonderful, great questions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.